Come along with me today as I dive into the Malazan universe again and challenge myself to rank the best characters in a tier list countdown. I've seen there are a ton of videos ranking the characters from Malazan Book of the Fallen. It seems to be a very popular thing to do. Now, I haven't watched anybody else's videos yet. I'm just recently finished to my first time through Malazan Book of the Fallen, and I knew I wanted to do some sort of ranking myself, so I didn't watch the others yet. I don't want it muddling with my mind. One of our viewers actually already requested this. So I was like, okay, how do I create my ranking list? What should I do? Just a top 10 list? Nah, I got something more fun for you here. I'm going to be cool like the younger people, and I've got a ranked tiered list. We didn't do these tiering things back when I was young, but I'm here for you now, and I've got my tiers of ranks of Malazan characters. It was kind of fun learning something new. Let me bring some tears to you now. Malazan Book of the Fallen has so many characters. It's part of the joy of the series. There's so much to love. Tons of characters, therefore, for me to consider and really think back through all the books and where I would put them, how I would categorize them. Phew, I had to kind of bring some order to the chaos to give you a decent list to watch here. So I've put them in different tiers based on, for this list, just how much I enjoyed experiencing these characters, how much they brought to the story for me. Did I love reading about them? So remember that when you go, what? Why is that one so low? Or why is that one so high? Or where is that character? It's how I enjoyed them and how much I loved reading them. So I'm just going to start with a B tier. Okay, we're starting down here. I've just got 5 characters that for me, they're above average, but not quite up there with the best when they were on the page for me. But again, they're still a cut above the average characters. So I'll start with the lowest of my 5, and that's Captain Kindly. Kindly was a hoot. That name is the opposite of his demeanor, the rough, obnoxious captain who would everybody wants to kill him, but that, it's all intentional. They're focused on how much they hate him instead of how much they hate their circumstances. It's very intentional. It works. I loved Captain Kindly, sharp man. Then there was Lieutenant Porres, goes kind of hand in hand with Kindly. A scheming, manipulative guy who's going to try to get ahead, but really isn't a bad guy. He's just making the best of his circumstances and having a little fun along the way. Porres grew on me as I spent more time with him, and by the end, I kind of enjoyed him. Then I've got Calor. You kind of hate this guy, and yet he's impressive. He's something, and every time he's on the page, I was captivated. So, Calor. Next on my B tier is just one that, I was like, there's something about this character that captivates. And by the end, I was just in love with him, and it's Ublalapung. As he finally reaches a point where he can solve every issue with a woman by sexing her. And he doesn't mean that badly. He won't force himself. Apparently, he doesn't have to because he's kind of a thing there. Somewhat diminished in capacity, and in other capacities, not diminished at all, apparently. Uh, Ublala was a hoot, and I loved him from the time I met him in book 5, but he grew on me more and more as I went. Finally, perhaps the most surprising one that I have on my B tier, the top of my B tier, Animandor Rake. I mean, he means so much to this series, no doubt. And yet, at times, he was boring me. I wanted to like him more, but he's such a brooding, dark individual and a deep thinker, but spends so much time just staring. Let me stare some more. What he does in the end of his character line, quite impressive. Really enjoy the character, but B tier. The top of the B tier, though, okay? Don't come at me too hard. Next, we move to the 10 characters who actually make my A tier. These are, I mean, really up there now. A is for awesome, okay? So much value. I appreciated what these brought to the story at a whole nother level. They added so much enjoyment to Malazan Book of the Fallen. So let me get to it. The numbers are weird. We'll say number 10 of my B tier. So working my way up through 10 of these is Tavor Perrin. You might think that's a little low. I mean, hey, it's A tier, okay? She's A tier. But for so much of the time, we don't get to know what's going on in her mind. She's so mysterious. She doesn't open up. And that got a little frustrating after a while. We see what she pulls off in the end. So A tier material, but yeah, it's just not enough of the time that Tavor really added to the enjoyment. So coming through the end makes it to A tier. My ninth one on A tier is Lestara Yill and the Shadow Dancer. I mean, ooh, she's got some stuff going on. A little possession with Cotillion. Uh, an amazing warrior all on her own. Goes from 7 cities all the way to the Lethery Empire and beyond. And right there at the side of Adjunct Tavor in the end. And I like me some Lestara Yill. That's an amazing character. Speaking of amazing characters, the 8th of my A list is Callum Mekar. Callum, the assassin, a bridge burner, someone who has been above and beyond in what he can do. Practically was dead until saved by Shadow Throne himself. Callum, special guy. Of course, right there side by side with him, the 7th on my A tier is Quick Ben. The High Mage, Ben Adalphin Dalat. There are still layers and mysteries behind Ben that I don't know yet. I'm going to keep reading some more books. I might learn more about him. But what we see throughout these stories is just incredible. Another bridge burner as he's hiding on the down low, but he is clearly top tier material. Number 6 on this A list, Onos Tulan. Okay, we're talking about, wow, a Talanamas who has quite the adventure. Once upon a time, first sword of the Amas. He goes from eternal undeadness to life again and enjoying life to the fullest and then losing it all again and then in the end getting it back. I mean, what a roller coaster of a ride. What a righteous guy. And you can't help but love what he gets to enjoy when it's over. It's like, yes, somebody gets a really good ending. But he does some harsh things too, no doubt. Number 5 on my A tier, I got Hedge, the bridge burner who was dead and back again. Hedge is such a character. Of course, hand in hand with Fiddler early in their stories, and then he goes ahead and blows himself up heroically, sacrificially, and then he slowly comes back, and he's out there with the merchants and gets on that wagon, and then, it's convoluted. But he ends up there in the end. And he and Fiddler, things are a little tense for a while. It's like, no, you're dead. You can't be here. I grieved for you already. But now he comes around. Hedge forms his new bridge burners because he missed out on being a bone hunter. Great stuff. And he's there when Fiddler needs him. So love me some Hedge. And number 4 on my A list is Bottle. This is a magician, a mage that's a little different, maybe high mage material, but he's got some special, unique abilities, especially being able to ride along with the different animals and possess them. I mean, he's how they get through Yucatan. He comes through again and again in some miraculous ways, some magical ways. And there's depths to Bottle, layers there that I enjoyed experiencing. Not to mention those dreams he has for quite a while. You know what I'm talking about. Number 3, my A tier is Hellion. She is such a capable leader of Malazans while being such an absolute drunk, a complete arachnophobe, all sorts of issues, and yet her people will die for her willingly. And she truly does lead them pretty well. Uniquely, differently, and always entertainingly. So Hellion, high in my A tier. Just loved reading about her. Then we've got number 2 on my A tier, Troll Sengar. I'll admit this is the only Sengar to make my list, but loved this character, loved his story arc, devastated with the ending he gets. I'm like, no! What could have been? And yet, is it an ending? There's a kid, you know. He leaves a legacy. But number 1 on my A tier, Shirkalal, the undead pirate queen. So entertaining as a character. Goes through that whole overhaul physically so that basically she has an eminence of life now, but basically needs to have sex a lot. How Erickson thought of this, it just mind-boggling. But it made for a very entertaining character to add to the story. Shirk Alal. But people, don't freak out that that's where my A tier stops, because I have an S tier. Yes, S tier is a thing, people. The superb, the truly superlative, the superior characters for me. I've got 10 more to bring at you here. These are above them all. There's nothing above the S tier. And who do I have? Number 10, Tak the Younger. My goodness, this guy goes through the ringer. So abused, so left out, so falling short, so destroyed. I mean, he has to get a new body at one point for all the mental, the physical angst he goes through, the emotional travails. And in the end, yeah, he might be dead, but he becomes a bridge burner. That moment when Whiskey Jack mentions that, loved it. Number 9, Draconis. We get so little Draconis in this 10-book set, yet what we get is fantastic. And what we get just in the end, I loved his stuff along with Ublalapung. Mwah. What he does to other elders. Yeah. I would want more Draconis. Maybe we get more Draconis when I keep reading the books. But what I got, it was just next level. So he makes my S tier. Number 8, Gano's Perrin. This guy, when I read Gardens of the Moon, I'm like, I don't know what this is about or who this is about or who a main character would be, but there's something about this Gano's Perrin. Sure enough. And, he comes in and out of the story throughout the 10 books, but he's a player. And what he pulls off in the final book, quite impressive, very entertaining. Always loved Gano's Perrin. Number 7, Shadow Throne. Emperor Kalinvet himself. I don't know if I love him or I hate him, but I'm impressed the heck out of by him, and also just the way he would talk to people, the wit that I would hear come out of him, the laughter, the cackles, the mysterious plans. I can see how he founded a Malazan empire. And now he's gone on to do way, way more. I don't think I'd ever want to get in the way of this guy in a plan. So, Shadow Throne, number 7. But number 6, I'd put just ahead of him. Croup. We didn't get enough Croup in this story. But what we got was delightful. We got a lot of Croup early on, and then little bits here and there. But there is something unique about this guy, and I feel like we just scratched the surface. We do not know. I'm hoping there's more Croup in the books to come, because this character is unique, is special, and is ridiculous. So it's so much fun to read. Number 5, Karsa Orlong. Not as much fun to read, though there are entertaining moments, especially as we're along with him later in the story. but he is an impressive character. He is a specimen. He shows a lot of growth along the way. He's also a character where you don't know what you're going to get. The way he takes out Rulad Sengar, the way he takes out Fenner, I man, Karsa Orlong rule the world. If he wanted to, they'd all be in trouble. But number 4, Male. The elder god, sometimes known as Bug, which is a big part of why he's number 4 on here, because he's this elder god of so much ability and power, and yet restrained in certain ways. There are rules, and yet he's just right there in the Lether court as the advisor, the magician, yeah, the treasurer. He's whatever needs to be because he seems to have latched on to T-Hole Bet. And he does some things that clearly go a little beyond whatever those rules are because he cares. He really likes T-Hole. I don't know why. Nobody knows why. But it makes for some really good reading. And then to see how he helped and what happens in the end. Yeah, Male. Way up on my list. Number 3, well, I was already talking about him, T-Hole Bennett. This guy, man, he's an insane genius. He is so thoroughly entertaining, and everybody around him either loves him or hates him for it. Some of them do both. The relationship he has with his brother Bryce, it's just so funny. When that letter comes from him in the last book, and he reads it, and has it read to him out loud, and the emperor had foreseen that would happen, and so he puts things in there just to be funny, to be embarrassing, to be a goofball, but he still has a purpose. He's definitely a mad genius, and he's a lot of fun to read. So made Midnight Tides one of my favorites of the 10 books, and then we get more. So good stuff. Number 2 on my S list is a 2 for 1. Gessler and Stormy. Do I have to say more? What we see from those all the way through their appearances is incredible. Just 2 of my absolute favorite characters. Period. And their ending, wow, seals the deal, man. Awesome. But number 1, and I was like, I really couldn't think of anyone else to make number 1. I thought, some of these that I just mentioned, Gessler and Stormy or T-Hole maybe could have been number 1, but somehow it just felt right for Fiddler. Strings. Fiddler is number 1 on my list. I just resounded to him. I loved reading everything with him. It was always some of the most fascinating stuff to read. And, you're with Fiddler pretty much from start to finish. Not everybody is like that. Fiddler's the one who won't die, who won't disappear, who never goes away and never quits, even when stuff sucks. And then, the deck of dragons and his special abilities just adds a little mystique. So, Fiddler, number 1. And that's the highest my lists go. But wait, I have a surprise for you. I have a Z tier. Yep. The often rumored and rarely seen bottom of the barrel. These are the ones that for me were a waste of space. The 5 characters I definitely could have done with less of on the page, maybe none of. So let me share my Z tier with you and see what you think. I'll go, kind of reverse. The worst will be last this time. So the top of my Z tier, so bad, but not the worst of the bad, is Erastus, the Errant. So an elder god who was kind of entertaining at first and then sucked by the end. No, get thee gone. I don't need any Erastus. He got more and more boring as we went. Speaking of boring, Namander Golet, the son of Anamander Rake, I guess goes on to be a ruler, a leader of the Teist Andi, but I didn't like anything with him. It's like, yawn. Okay, there were teeny moments maybe, but most of that storyline that involved him just tedious, boring, didn't really do a lot for me. Could have cut those pages. Speaking of pages that could be cut, we've got the Mibe. You know, the mother of Silver Fox? Because we've got all these pages of angst as she's wasting away and then mentally going to another realm and it was a little confusing, but it also just wasn't that interesting. So, Mibe, nah, didn't need that part. Then we've got a character that I just, okay, could have been a fascinating character, but I ended up just not liking the character, and that's Clip, who, is with Namander and his group, leading them for a ways, and is not a good guy. Yeah, just not a good guy. I didn't care for Clip. Didn't like him when I first met him, didn't get better. But the worst is one that, had the potential at times to be interesting, but also just grosses me out, and it's Terralac Veed. The one that comes and replaces Mappo as the handler of Acarium, but has a very different agenda and sets him up to be the one to go up against Rulad Sengar and always does the spit on his hands and grease his hair back. And I'm like, oh, that's disgusting. He's disgusting. I was grossed out by him all the time, and he had no redeemable qualities at all. Terralac Veed. Ugh. The worst of my Z tier. All right, there you go. I hope that was entertaining to you. Let me know. What do you think? Which ones would you definitely have in a different order? Am I so way off? Or just share your S tier, your A tier, your B tier, your Z tier. I'd love to hear your Z tier. Which of those 5 that you give the boot, whatever. But I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't. And hit that notification bell, and you'll hear when Zach and I drop more things. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.